I had a question. I'm not sure if it's really suited to the format of a group discussion, because it's to some degree personal. But it's about dealing with doubt, especially in the initial stages of the training. Um, I personally, um, I've always been a very avoidant person. Um, so my main way of dealing with problems, was to not deal with them for the most part. Um, and I'm to some degree afraid of whether my interest in the Dhamma is some kind of elaborate strategy to avoid the stresses of what would be called the normal life. Um, and besides that, another source of doubt are we probably heard that question many times, the supernatural aspects of the Dhamma, or some inconsistencies in the suttas, or, for example, I don't know, are the immaterial attainments the same thing as jhanas? Are they really part of the training, and so on? Those kinds of things that really sometimes shake my faith um, in what I'm trying to do. So, do you have any advice for that kind of situation, or any practical contemplations that would be helpful in dealing with those matters?
Yeah, well, in terms of the practice being a strategy for avoiding things, uh, the question is, why would you not want to avoid suffering? Because, like, why would you be worried about um, the Dhamma being a strategy for avoidance?
Mm-hmm.
It's because you know deep down that avoidance results in suffering. Avoidance results in not dealing with things, which then makes a problem fester, which then makes you suffer even more. So whatever you do, whether it's avoidance or non-avoidance, it's going to be because you think that it will free you from suffering. So because that is the fundamental goal of the Dhamma, that is you cannot go wrong by practicing the Dhamma. Now, of course, like you said, the problem is mainly that pressure of doubt. It's not whether it makes sense or not. Like, the doubt will make you question whether it makes sense or not, even though if you sit down and think about it, it does make sense. So the what you have to recognize is that doubt is a symptom of a non-trained mind. So you will not be able to clear the doubts before you start the training, because it's precisely the result of the training is the overcoming of doubt. So if you keep that context of, like, okay, well, whatever I do, I'll be doing it because I want to avoid suffering, then you will not be able to ignore that all these other ways that you might go about it that are not the Dhamma are actually making the problem worse. So you would just need to keep bringing to mind that context, and reminding yourself that even those things that you mentioned, the immaterial attainments and the jhanas, none of that fundamentally affects the core principle of, if I act out of craving, I'm making my suffering worse, which is all that the Dhamma is. Like, all these immaterial attainments, you don't even necessarily have to go through those in order to free yourself from suffering. So that has to be the underlying context that is universal. Like, and it's something that people recognize even outside of the Buddha's teaching to a minimal degree, that if you act out of desires, act out of aversion, uh, break precepts and live an unwholesome lifestyle, you will suffer more. And that's really hammering down that recognition is more than enough for you to practice the fundamental aspects of the training. And the other thing you mentioned was about the... What was the second question?
The essence of it is that, I guess, the parts of the Dhamma, or the content of the suttas, that seems uncertain or hard to believe in, it also in some way casts doubt on what I agree is the essence of the Dhamma, the freedom from suffering, restraint, and so on.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. So it shouldn't cast doubt on it, because inevitably, when you read those things like immaterial attainments and all this stuff, you will be reading it through assumptions of kind of like, I don't know, you haven't ever even ventured near the ocean, and yet you're reading this detailed book about all the I don't know, the ocean floor and the fish and the all these things that would be completely abstract for you, and then you might wonder like, oh well, it doesn't really make sense that you would have this huge I don't know, heights and stuff that go all the way down to lower than anybody has ever observed and stuff. That sounds outrageous, and that's precisely because there is no concrete basis for it to connect with it. But if you put that stuff aside, because again, all these suttas are like extreme amounts of volume of information that nobody would have had access to in the Buddha's time. And the Buddha wouldn't have started talking about these immaterial attainments to somebody who had no basis to even understand what he was talking about. So it's only because now we have access to all of these suttas that then all this information kind of starts creating doubts in all these things. But it's a gradual training. The way that it actually unfolds is a gradual training where you focus on what's relevant for you at the time, and because that is the basis where you will be able to see the direct challenge and how it will help you overcome suffering. So most basically it would be the precepts. Almost anybody who has a degree of self-transparency will be able to see that on days where they've been breaking precepts, they will have a more wild and uncontrollable mind than on days where they don't. And that's a direct, I don't need to be speculating like, oh, is this really what the Buddha meant or something. You can very directly see the benefit of doing that for yourself. And then when you have accomplished that, then you move on to the next stage and to the next stage. And at a certain point, then you would come to these immaterial attainments, and then you would see how you practice that. And with the same degree of clarity that you can now see how you would practice the precepts. So, but yeah, again, none of this kind of rational laying out of considerations is going to undo that pressure, that emotional pressure of doubt that you feel. Yeah. So that's something that you have to keep in mind, because otherwise it will keep baiting you into trying to resolve it, whereas the very way that you deal with it is by not acting out of it. And
have faith.
Yes, and you also have to recognize all the other things that you do. Like if you still act out, like chase after sense pleasures, act out of ill will, distract yourself, basically break the 8 precepts, that same intensity of pressure or intensity of wildness is feeding into the doubt. So you will have doubt for as long as you act out of sensuality, basically. If you were to, let's say, not change your lifestyle, but put all the effort into clarifying everything about the suttas and get a PhD in the entire Pali Canon, the pressure of the doubt would remain completely unchanged, because that's not where it comes from.
I have a follow-up question. You said overcome doubt. Did you mean that doubt never arises again, or did you mean that even if it arises, you're not touched by it?
Well, I'd say you have to differentiate between not knowing something and then feeling doubt. Like doubt it's an emotional state that's always bound with craving. So doubt is when you don't know the answer and you have a resistance to not knowing the answer. You have an emotional pressure that makes you want to find the answer. So in that sense, yes, doubt would never arise if you tame your mind. But that doesn't mean that you would know everything. There will be countless things that you don't know, but the difference is you will not feel pain, pressure, discomfort on account of not knowing those things. And that's really all that the problem was. It wasn't the lack of knowledge, it was the suffering. sometimes you could see that in very practical scenarios. Like you can have spent days trying to figure out the answer to some question or get some piece of information that you didn't have before, and then for whatever reason you get distracted, something else in your life happens, you forget about the question, and then you try to think about it again, and you don't really care about the answer anymore. So then that shows you like it wasn't actually the lack of the answer that was making you suffer.
So you're saying doubt is lack of knowledge affected by craving.
Yes.
So yeah, we get it.
Yeah.
Is there a direction to this clarification? Because trying to resolve doubt and just kind of you're sort of coming after it, taking it for granted, and just going out, absorbing yourself into it. But it seems that there's another direction.
Yeah, that is
that is beyond doubt.
Yeah.
And I feel like that.
But it won't necessarily feel like it.
No,
but it is that internal
but
direction which is where you resolve doubt.
Yeah.
Because everything external
Yeah.
can be, if you attend to it wrongly, you will become in doubt about.
it just feels like that direction is a thread for that a Pratujana could follow, and it's even in admitting to, well, coming to terms with, I know that I suffer. It's like, well, like I don't know the way out. I know that I'm lost, and like knowing that I'm lost is like I'm less lost.
Yeah.
And so that's a kind of a step. So I suffer, but at least having that perspective then allows me to maybe search.
Well, yeah, it's not even like if you were to truly accurately understand I am suffering, that would already be like, as the Satipatthana Sutta describes, knowing dukkha as dukkha. You abide independent, not clinging to anything in the world.
Which is already the right view.
Yeah. So it's not even that you would need a separate step. If you pursue that direction sufficiently to see an arisen feeling of suffering on the right level, that would already undo the problem, because the problem is ignorance, as to say. Like, you're feeling the suffering, but you're not aware of the extent of it.
Yeah, what is?
So, that's the reason why the suttas would say that the precursor to the right view is yonisamanasikara. So it's not the right view yet. It is something that a Pratujana would be able to practice, and if cultivated long enough, which happens through, again, the precepts and sense restraint, they would be able to get it to the strength, let's say, where it's potent enough to properly see an arisen feeling as an arisen feeling.
I guess also a question from that is Yoniso Manasikara so a Pratujana can be developing it
But okay, so actually,
Yeah.
that brings me back to something I wanted to say. So yes, that direction of yonisamanasikara, which is the direction beyond doubt, if you
yeah,
want to call it that,
that's what I was going to say.
anybody has access to that. But knowing that that is the direction beyond doubt, that's what the right view is. So that's why it's knowing that you know, not just knowing. Like, yeah, anybody can, to some extent recognize that right level, but being sure and unable to doubt that that is the right level,
And hence to go there and sufficiently hang out there long enough in order for that to sink in.
and that no matter what happens, like 7 rebirths, millions of things that would happen in that time frame, that they're unable to forget that this is the right level. That's the difference.
Just on a practical level, if there is a pressure of, say, doubt at the time, the direction of engaging with the craving and the doubt is kind of going into that subject of what the doubt is and trying to resolve it and thinking.
Yeah.
and the right direction, that right internal direction, I guess the direction of Yoniso Manasikara would then be to say there is a pressure of doubt right now, and then just staying there. Is that
Yes.
essentially what it is?
Yeah, well, that's what you will try to do. But if only it were that simple, obviously. Like, you will try that, but you will find yourself still, to some extent, like, the common thing that would happen is you would start to over-clarify, okay, so now what exactly do I do so that I don't engage with the doubt? And then now that's what the doubt became established in. So because you can kind of think about it, and it makes sense, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's what I'm going to do now. But when it actually comes up, and then there's that whole momentum associated with it, you won't be able to maintain the same level of clear perspective that you have when the pressure isn't there. So that's the tricky part. Like, almost anything, including your remembering of the practice, will end up infected with the doubt, will become your way of acting out of the doubt. So then that's why it won't be perfect from the beginning, but if you keep doing it, eventually these ways in which, like, your recognition of the problem, of where the acting out begins, starts to get more and more refined. So then you wouldn't be able to overlook what you would have overlooked before, which is that even this attempt to clarify what the right endurance is and what the Yoniso Manasikara is, that too is falling within the doubt.
Yeah, to not feel
exactly.
That.
Yeah. And then your attempt to, let's say, stay with that internal dimension would more and more accurately end up in actually that, and not, some other distraction that you. That's why it's seeing the signs of the mind is the necessary prerequisite for everything to work, because if you're not seeing the signs of the mind, you won't be aware of that kind of under the radar sort of background momentum that's pushing you to do something that you think is wholesome. In this case, clarifying what is the right endurance and not enduring and not acting out of the doubt and so on. It's like a perpetually dynamic thing. So that's why it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe one example would be like, you have to look at the stock market prices, but then you only, like, you look at the prices right now, and for the rest of your life, you make decisions based on those initial prices that you saw. Whereas no, you will only be able to make the right decisions if constantly you know the current price, which is the current state of the mind.
And essentially then, when you get to the point where you endure those things without acting out of them in any way,
Then you will not suffer.
then basically that's what the absence of craving
Yes,
is.
yeah.
Being able to not move whatsoever.
Not needing
in
to
the
do
face.
anything about it.
Yeah.
But is it possible that the pressure doesn't arise in the first place?
Yeah. So that's
when you see the feeling.
exactly, yeah. So if the feeling is understood for what it is, if there is no momentum to act out of it, then there is no pressure. So the pressure is there to the extent that there is craving.